Hello, my friends. Tonight, we're going to let our minds soften and drift away into an old story. A story where human absurdity sometimes turns out to be the most charming part of history. Just imagine, you're here with me now. The room is warm and cozy. The light is gentle, dimmed down. It's quiet, and a story is slowly unfolding. You're sitting back, feeling the cushion soft beneath you. The weight of the day begins to slip away with every word I say. Now we're stepping back in time. The year is 1358. Not an easy year, but one that left behind a story so strange, it feels like a dream. You're in St. Bees, a little seaside village, resting against the coast of northern England. The air carries salt from the sea, and the faint, woody smell of old fishing boats. Everything feels still, calm, peaceful. The village is small. Life circles around an old monastery, where monks chant softly, and a cobbled street, where fishmongers and bakers call out their trade. You find yourself in the market square, where the smell of warm bread mingles with the briny scent of fish. People pass by in earth-colored tunics and long skirts. Their faces are serious, almost too serious, for such a bright day. They're waiting, whispering. Something is about to change. In this little town, one man holds power, Mayor Eadwulf. His beard is rough, his eyes small and suspicious. He never smiles. He despises laughter, especially after the plague, which has left everyone scarred. And today, he is ready to announce something new. The guards step into the square. Heavy helmets. Leather armor. A tall man unrolls a scroll and begins to read, his voice echoing in the air. The decree is called Lex Laetitia, the law of joy. But it isn't about encouraging joy. No, it is a tax on joy. From this day, the man reads, anyone found with a radiant smile, a grin too bright, too cheerful for our town's condition, will be fined 1 silver penny. 1 silver penny. A fortune for a poor villager. On the balcony, Mayor Eadwulf twitches his lips, a grimace that is, perhaps, the closest thing to a smile he has ever shown. The crowd is stunned. The apple seller beside you presses his lips into a straight, rigid line. A young woman drops her flowers in shock, then bends quickly to pick them up, her face blank. Some say this law was about control. Others say it was simply madness, one bitter man's attempt to smother joy. But either way, it became law. Now, in St. Bees, a smile is no longer free. Your own lips twitch, just a little. Am I smiling? You wonder. Even the softest smile might be judged too radiant. And then, the final warning. Laughter, any sound of chuckling, will be fined, double. Even sound was forbidden. And so, you are here, drifting in this strange moment of history, where joy itself was hidden away. Your eyes grow heavy. Sleep begins to draw you in. Before you drift off, maybe, tap like or subscribe. Only if it feels right. Perhaps leave a comment. Tell me how long it usually takes for you to slip into sleep. 10 minutes? 15? Or maybe you won't make it that far before this story carries you away. Now, turn off the lights. Let the soft hum of the fan fill the room. And let's begin tonight's journey. You are floating, gently, in the history of St. Bees. The first shock has passed, fading into a quiet, lingering tension. Remember the scent of sea salt, and of fresh bread from the market. Now, even those smells seem restrained, as if they too are trying not to awaken any hint of joy. What you need to keep in mind is the history that Mayor Eadwulf twisted to his own advantage. The year is 1358, just a decade after the devastation of the Black Death. England was scarred. Even little St. Bees, though somewhat isolated, had not been spared. You can feel that heaviness in the air. Everyone is living in the shadow of shared trauma. There is a quiet, unspoken agreement that joy should not be shown too brightly when so many lives have been lost. This was the somber truth of history, reshaped by Eadwulf into law. He claimed that loud laughter and radiant smiles were signs of carelessness, wastefulness, displays of health and wealth that disrespected the suffering of others. "This is a measure for communal modesty," he declared. But everyone knew it was just an excuse to squeeze one more silver penny out of the poor. You notice a vegetable seller nearby. She holds up her finest carrots, but her face is blank, expressionless, as if carved from stone. The contrast between the fresh, bright produce and her hollow expression feels strangely surreal. "Carrots," she says flatly. "They can be eaten." Her customer, a broad-shouldered blacksmith, nods slowly. He dares not smile, dares not speak. He simply pays, accepts the carrots, and walks away with a heavy, meditative look, as though pondering the impermanence of life itself. The decree had changed everything. It wasn't just about money, it was about policing emotions, forcing every villager to wear an invisible mask of seriousness. And then, something unexpected. On the very first day of the law, a child laughed. You see it clearly. A little boy, perhaps 3 years old, chasing a puppy at the corner of the street. The dog does something silly, maybe it spins in circles, chasing its own tail. The child bursts into laughter. A pure, ringing giggle. A perfect joloklum. Instantly, the town's first smile measurer rushes forward. His name is Barnaby. He isn't frightening by nature, but his flustered face, desperate to enforce such a ridiculous law, makes the moment strangely tense. The child's mother scoops him up, pale with fear. She stammers apologies, insisting he is too young to know the rules. Barnaby, by regulation, must still write it down. He scribbles clumsily on his parchment. But the child has no money. So the double tax, 2 silver pennies for giggling, falls upon the mother. You feel a soft sense of injustice, and at the same time, a deeper calm settling over you. You're drifting now, yet still aware of the absurdity of this medieval world. Some scholars say, it was in that very moment, when children's laughter was taxed, that Eadwulf went too far. That his control was not about finance at all, but about crushing the very essence of humanity. If even a child was forbidden to laugh, the community's soul was withering. Your eyes begin to close. The murmurs of St. Bees drift like a soft background hum. Footsteps move slowly on the cobbles, every face frozen into stone-like seriousness. And the story continues. You are here. Safe. Relaxed. Let the weight of history press down, not on you, but around you. Let it lull you into calm. This absurd law will not last forever. But for now, you are inside it, inside the hushed silence of St. Bees, where laughter is forbidden, and yet your comfort only deepens. You continue drifting through the heavy air of St. Bees, a place where joy itself has become a luxury, taxed and controlled. You can sense a subtle shift in how people interact. Smiles no longer belong to them. They belong to Mayor Eadwulf. The punishment of the child had been a chilling reminder. The villagers now understood this law was real, and it would be enforced. And so, the tax on radiant smiles, the rictus exuberans, began reshaping the very fabric of society. You find yourself in the fish market, where sellers already struggle to make ends meet, and now face the risk of being fined simply for doing their work. Selling requires friendliness, a welcoming face, a reassuring smile. But how can anyone do that, without showing even a flicker of joy? There is a man named Geoffrey. He sells fish. His catch is fresh, shining with the sea's salt. But when he tries to show its quality, his face twists into something pained. These salmon, he murmurs flatly. They were caught this morning. I assure you, they contain nothing that could possibly spark inappropriate joy. His customer, an elderly woman, examines the fish with a face carefully blank. Her hands tremble as she pays. Not from the coldness of the fish, but from the fear that she might smile at their freshness. And here is the curious detail. The wealthier townsfolk, merchants, small landowners, are hardly touched by this law. Why? Because their dignity has always been measured in solemnity. A stern face was already their mark of status. They do not need to smile to sell their wares. they simply give orders. But the poor, the street vendors, the hawkers, the ones who survive on charm and warmth, they are struck the hardest. This is not a tax on wealth. It is a tax on class, disguised as a tax on emotion. History shows us many strange taxes from the medieval world, levies on luxury, on behavior, on habits. Always designed to raise money quickly, usually at the expense of the most vulnerable. The smile tax, though absurd, fits this pattern of authoritarian control. You walk slowly across the cobblestones, leather shoes tapping softly around you. No whistling, no humming, only the steady rhythm of the sea breeze, and the gentle hush of waves rolling to shore. A sound deeply soothing. You notice the younger villagers, trying to speak to one another. They use nods, coded glances, the flicker of an eye. Anything to avoid moving their mouths into a forbidden shape. It is almost like a silent game, a new language. Some scholars suggest Eadwulf may have accidentally created a hidden body language. A secret code of silence and caution, that bound people closer together in their shared oppression. A quiet resistance. And yes, you can sense it now. A muted rebellion, not of violence, but of sullen obedience. They follow the law, but in such an exaggerated, joyless way, that the absurdity becomes impossible to ignore. Let this strange absurdity make you feel even sleepier. There is nothing here to worry about. You are only a gentle observer, drifting past a peculiar moment in history. Notice how even in the strictest control, the human spirit finds subtle ways to resist, or at least to conceal what cannot be expressed. The heaviness of medieval tunics hangs in the air. People move slowly, almost tiptoeing, as though afraid to let a single sound of happiness escape. Let this silence rock you into rest. Let it lull you gently into sleep. You continue your gentle journey through St. Bees, a place where every facial muscle is held tightly, in a forced solemnity. Now we look deeper into the strange machinery of this tax, and more importantly, into the people who must enforce it. If the smile tax was the creation of Mayor Eadwulf, then its enforcement belongs to those with a name both fearful and strange. The censor vultus, the measurers of smiles. You notice one of them now. A thin young man named Alaric. His cloak is the color of ash, plain, unimpressive. What makes him stand out is his instrument. A finely carved wooden caliper, looking almost like a tool of science. The oddity lies not in the man, but in the rules he must uphold. For Eadwulf's decree is not vague, it is precise, almost geometric. The curvature of the lips, curvatura labialis. If the corners of the mouth rise more than 1/16 of an inch, that is a rictus levis, a minor smile, punished with half a silver coin. The exposure of teeth, dentium me pratio. If even the smallest glimpse of teeth is revealed, it becomes a rictus exuberans, a radiant smile, punished with a full silver coin. The wrinkling of the eyes, plica oculi. The appearance of crow's feet, proof of genuine joy, is enough to convict, no matter the shape of the lips. A cruel detail, for it punishes the truest smiles, the ones the eyes cannot hide. You see Alaric approach a cobbler named Thomas. Thomas has just finished repairing a fine pair of boots. He cannot help it. His face softens into a small, proud expression. Alaric lifts his wooden tool and measures the curve of Thomas's mouth. 1/8 of an inch, Alaric murmurs. His voice holds no cruelty, only weary resignation. That is a rictus exuberans. You have displayed inappropriate delight. In spite of the inflation of timber costs, Thomas exhales heavily. A sigh. Thankfully, sighs are not yet taxed. Behind this absurd ritual lies a historical truth: the taxation of behavior. In many small medieval tyrannies, rulers sought to quantify and categorize emotions, to turn what is natural into a financial transaction. And so, a miniature bureaucracy is born. A layer of officials who do nothing but watch the faces of others. Your eyelids grow heavy now. You hear the soft clack of Alaric's wooden tool closing. The sound is delicate, almost like a lullaby bell. It reminds you, everything here is under control. And you may let go. You may wonder, do the measurers of smiles ever smile themselves? Some scholars argue they are, in truth, the most miserable souls of all. Trapped in a loop of sorrow. Forced to maintain perfect solemnity, lest they fall victim to the very law they uphold. As you drift further, imagine Alaric's blank face, as he carefully writes in his ledger, Thomas, cobbler. Offense, delight, at boots. Pure absurdity, written into history. And it lulls you. The dull rhythm of bureaucracy empties your mind. You are safe. And this story carries you further into rest. You drift gently through the daily life of St. Bees. The air feels different now. The smell of freshly baked bread still lingers. But no one dares to inhale too deeply. The risk of satisfaction might lift the corners of a mouth. The smile tax has created a society of faces, utterly expressionless. Imagine yourself at the marketplace. Every word spoken is flat, without melody. Every greeting delivered with lowered heads, with carefully controlled blinks. A gathering where tone has vanished, and silence rules. But here, a curious detail emerges. A new marketplace, hidden in the shadows. The black market of anti-smile remedies. You wander down a narrow alley behind the monastery. A man waits there, cloaked in secrecy. He is known as Friar Malcontent. And in his hands are small dark vials, said to numb the very muscles of joy. Just a dab along the cheeks and lips before the market, he whispers to a nervous customer. It will help your face hold perfect neutrality. The best protection against the censor vultus. In truth, these potions likely do nothing more than cause a mild itch. But fear is stronger than reason. People pay eagerly for the invisible comfort. A fragile shield against harsher punishment. You can feel the tension in their faces. Not smiling, yet not sad either. Instead, they wear a deliberate emptiness. A medieval poker face. History tells us this is not unusual. In times of plague, or in absurd laws, quack remedies and superstition always thrive. When life feels unpredictable, people grasp for talismans. The anti-smile potion is one such talisman. A strange meeting point between tyranny and desperation. My voice guides you softly now. Through this strange tableau. Villagers practice holding their faces steady as they walk. Closing their eyes, breathing deeply. Training their inner calm to prevent any spark of delight. And then, another quiet resistance emerges. The rise of the grand, bushy mustache. Men begin to grow thick, heavy facial hair. A curtain to hide the dangerous curve of their lips. A shield against the mayor's gaze. The more hair, the less chance of being fined. Some scholars argue this shift in fashion was itself a passive rebellion, an aesthetic resistance. By obscuring their features, the people made the work of the smile measurers more difficult. And thus, the mustache became a secret emblem of dissent. You drift further, feeling safe. Here, you do not need to hold your own face still. You may relax every muscle. Soften your forehead. Release the corners of your mouth. Allow your eyelids to grow heavier. As the story carries you deeper, even fashion has become rebellion. And it lulls you, gently, towards sleep. You are drifting, listening to the hushed whispers of St. Bees. The tight control of Mayor Eadwulf has made the air heavy. But it has also given birth to secret analyses, carried out in the dim corners of the monastery. You find yourself inside the old library. A single candle burns low, its flame casting a gentle glow across the face of Magister Aldhelm, a local scholar. He is the only one who dares to question the true purpose behind Eadwulf's rule. His voice comes to you in a whisper, soft as falling leaves, soothing, almost lulling you to sleep. Aldhelm explains that the smile tax is not merely a foolish decree. It is a test of power. This is the accepted history. Petty tyrants often impose absurd laws. to measure the obedience of their subjects. If the people will pay, simply to avoid smiling, then they will obey anything. The tax was never just about money, though Eadwulf welcomed the coin. It was about control of the spirit. Aldhelm unrolls an old piece of parchment. Eadwulf claimed it was for communal modesty after the plague. He murmurs, but look closely at those fined. Most were craftsmen and small sellers. The true purpose, Aldhelm suggests, was to control the display of wealth. In a small town, wealth was often shown not with gold or jewels, but with comfort and cheer. A radiant smile after selling a good bundle. A burst of laughter after a profitable deal. These were subtle signs of prosperity. And Eadwulf, driven by envy, could not bear them. So he turned joy into guilt, ensuring the poor would never feel richer than his own solemn self. A curious, almost comical result followed. The rising price of small bronze mirrors. Why? Because everyone now needed to practice, to check their expression, to make sure their lips did not curl, their eyes did not crinkle, before stepping outside. It became a nightly ritual, to stare into one's own face, and smooth it into emptiness. You imagine yourself looking into such a mirror, watching a face try to erase all feeling. But here you feel relieved, because you do not need to do this. You can simply let your features soften, your muscles relax, your forehead ease. Some scholars argue even now that Eadwulf himself was trapped in imitation. Perhaps he had read of another strange law. Perhaps he copied it, hoping to look severe and authoritative, not realizing the mockery he was creating for history. Aldhelm nods gently, placing down his scroll. This law is not about sadness, he whispers. It is about submission. Let the thought of submission drift past you. Here, in this moment, you need not submit to anything. You only need to let go, and allow these details of history to carry you deeper, into stillness, into safety, into sleep. The silence of the library surrounds you. The scent of old parchment. The whispering voice of the scholar. All of it is lulling you further and further away. You can feel it now. The quiet anger, humming beneath the stillness of St. Bees. It isn't the kind of rage that bursts like fire. No, it is heavier, slower, like a thick fog pressing against the streets. A weight of discontent, carried in the air itself. Each time a smile measurer, a censor vultus, passes by, punishing a vendor for the faintest slip of expression, that fog thickens. The townsfolk begin to whisper. They no longer question the law alone. They begin to question the man who made it. And here is the part of history that sounds so strange, so almost comical. Mayor Eadwulf was never a noble, never a skilled administrator. No, before he wore the chain of office, he was a failed baker. He once tried to open his own bakery. But his bread never rose. It came out flat, heavy, impossible to chew. And across the street, a woman named Mabel ran her own bakery. Her loaves swelled beautifully, golden and fragrant. Each time Eadwulf walked by, he saw people smiling with delight as they bit into her bread. That envy grew inside him. He could not bear the joy Mabel spread so effortlessly. And so, when fortune gave him a title and a little power, he found his revenge. He taxed that joy. He made smiles dangerous. No one could laugh at bread, or at life itself, without fear. And doesn't it feel almost bitterly funny? An entire town's silence, born from one man's petty jealousy. Some scholars argue such tales, about failed bakers and private grudges, are folklore, added later to explain absurd tyranny. But here, it feels so very fitting. The hatred of another's happiness was all the fuel he needed. Listen now, as a farmer at your side whispers his own story. He tells you how he had to choke back laughter when his donkey dropped an entire bundle of hay. His voice is low, sorrowful. And yet, the effort of not laughing makes the tale even more amusing. Let that absurdity carry you deeper into calm. Let Eadwulf's bitterness drift far from you. Because you are not bound by his envy. You are safe. Free to breathe, free to rest. Free to drift down, softly, into sleep. You are sinking deeper now. Into the absurdity of this law. The tension has reached its peak. In a single, public trial. The case of the loudest laugh. You stand in the town square. People gather close around a crude wooden platform. And there sits Mayor Eadwulf, perched upon a judge's chair. His face, more sour than ever. As though he is trying to strangle joy itself with his frown. The accused is Ilara. A gentle weaver, known for her kindness. Her crime, excessive chuckling. In Latin, they call it juluculum nimis. This, too, has roots in history. In the Middle Ages, community trials were rarely about justice. They were performances, designed to remind the people who held power. And so, Ilara's trial, though ridiculous, became a stage for control. The chief witness is Alaric. The weary smile measurer you've heard of before. Eadwulf leans forward, voice hoarse. Where was she caught? Alaric answers flatly. She was weaving, my lord. I heard a high, sharp sound drifting from her window. I broke in, pardon me, I entered to investigate. And here comes the strange little detail. Alaric presents his evidence. A broken weaving needle. He explains softly. When I asked why she laughed, she said she had tried a new pattern for a shawl. But her needle snapped. She felt relief that only the needle had broken, and not the whole fabric. That relief came out as a juluculum. Ilara, then, was guilty, not of reckless joy, but of the tiniest laugh of relief after a small accident. Eadwulf stares at the broken needle. The absurdity is laid bare. This law does not just tax joy. It taxes the release of tension itself. Some scholars whisper that this trial was a turning point. The people saw at last. No one could truly obey such a law. It demanded something almost impossible. A superhuman stillness of feeling. Not only never to laugh, but never to feel relief, never to feel lightness, lest it break across the face. And so Eadwulf, sensing the silence of the crowd, rushed to give his sentence. Ilara, guilty of exuberance lev amen. Excessive display of relief. 2 silver coins. The guards lead her away. But you notice something subtle. She does not smile. Yet she blinks slowly, deliberately at the crowd. A secret wink of defiance. As if to say, they may take my money, but they cannot take my relief. And now the scene begins to fade. The square, the crowd, the judgment, all dissolving into mist. Let the absurdity of this trial wash over you. You don't need to react. You don't need to fight. Just let your own face soften. Your muscles grow heavy. And drift away. Into the quiet. Into the deep. Into sleep. You are witnessing street bees once more. Still under the smile tax. But now, instead of weary submission, you begin to notice something different. A quiet wave of creativity. A playful defiance. Not rebellion in the open, but little tricks, clever disguises. Tiny loopholes in the law. After Ilara's trial, the people understood. Mayor Eadwulf's rules could never be fully enforced. The law ran against the very nature of being human. And so, they found ways to bend it. Ways to live. History tells us this is common. When oppression grows heavy, communities invent secret codes, small rituals, to keep their freedom alive without punishment. Here in St. Bees, you see these strange, charming inventions. There is the prayer mask, Masca supplicationis. Merchants and craftsmen wrap coarse woolen shawls around their lower faces, covering every feature below the eyes. Outwardly they say, "We are practicing humility. We are keeping our faces reverent, in memory of the plague." But truly, those shawls hide crooked smirks, hidden grins, the tiniest twitch of a mouth corner. Then there is the nodding dance. Motus capitis. Because chuckling now carries double penalties. People learn to show delight by nodding. Fast, sharp, repeated dips of the head. Someone tells a funny story, and instead of laughter, you see a head bobbing furiously, as if in grave agreement with Holy Scripture. The funnier the tale, the faster the nodding. It becomes a silent dance of suppressed joy. And there is the satisfied sigh. Suspirium laetitia. When someone tastes good bread, or warms themselves by the fire, they do not smile. Instead, they breathe out a long, heavy sigh. On the surface, it is fatigue, perhaps sadness, but everyone knows it is their secret way of saying, I am happy. I am safe. Now, you notice one of the smile measurers approaching a man, just after he has finished a wild, frantic nodding dance. What are you doing? The official demands. The man straightens, face solemn, yet his neck still trembling with suppressed laughter. I am agreeing, very strongly, that the weather today is not too cold. Sir? The inspector cannot punish him. Nods are not taxed. A perfect loophole. Some scholars later wrote that this creativity was the beginning of the end, when laws draw a sharp, absurd line between forbidden and permitted acts. They force people to invent new harmless gestures. Gestures that turn the law itself into a joke. The authority of Mayor Eadwulf was undone not by open protest, but by laughter disguised as sighs, smiles hidden beneath cloth, and crowds of people nodding like puppets. And now you feel your eyelids grow heavy. Let this hidden humor carry you towards sleep. You do not need to sigh, or nod, or hide your smile. You only need to let go. Your face relaxes, your breath softens, and you drift down into rest. You are drifting now, slowly, lightly, as though carried on the quiet sea breeze beyond street bees. The townspeople's playful loopholes have driven Mayor Eadwulf nearly mad. And yet, as you watch this absurdity, a wider theme of history begins to unfold. You overhear a conversation between Magister Aldhelm, the scholar you've met before, and a rare visitor, a traveling merchant from the continent. Their voices are hushed, soothing, a calm scholarly rhythm that contrasts with the tension of the town. Aldhelm whispers, Eadwulf's law, though it targets the human face, it carries the same spirit of control as another stranger tax of later centuries, the window tax. And so he explains, the window tax, common in England and France long after, was imposed on houses by counting their windows. The logic was simple. More windows meant a bigger house, and therefore greater wealth. But the result was that people bricked over their own windows to escape the levy. And here, a strange echo appears. The window tax punished the light coming into a house. The smile tax punished the light of joy going out of a face. Both took something essential, air, brightness, delight, and turned it into a liability. Both led to unnecessary deprivation, self-censorship, darkness. You imagine now the houses of St. Bees, their windows sealed, their rooms heavy with shadow, and at the same time, their people walking with dimmed expressions, carefully keeping their faces dark to avoid a fine. The merchant shakes his head softly, but not too quickly, lest it be mistaken for the nodding dance of delight, and he murmurs, It is censorship, without a sword. Some scholars argue that, brief though it was, the smile tax left a lasting mark. It taught the people of St. Bees how absurdity in law could be wielded as power, and how humor, subtle, quiet, disguise, was often the truest defense. It was, in the end, a lesson. Never allow your joy to be priced by the frown of a single man. And as you rest here, reflecting on the curious history of taxes, feel the calm of this scholarly dialogue wrap around you. Outside, the sea winds whisper. Inside, the voices of Aldhelm and the merchant are steady even, like the turning of old pages. You are safe here. You are at ease. And you can drift deeper and deeper still into sleep. You are witnessing yet another fragment of life in St. Bees, a place where even the deepest, most private emotions must unfold under the shadow of prohibition. After hearing of clever loopholes and playful defiance, you now step into a secret, hidden moment of romance. For even love must obey Mayor Eadwulf's law. You are walking along the stone quay at sunset. The air is cool, the sea is breathing, its waves rolling and breaking in a rhythm so soothing, so steady, that it feels like the ocean itself is singing you to rest. And there, tucked behind a heap of worn fishing nets, you see them, a young couple, Thomas, the fisherman, and Anya, the candlemaker. They are making vows, but their faces must remain blank. Thomas holds Anya's hands, and though his face is still, you can feel the pulse of devotion through his words. In a low, solemn whisper, almost like a hymn, he says, "I swear to love you until winter itself ceases, and I swear, by this neutral expression, that no law will ever lessen the respect I hold for you." Anya gazes back at him, her face serious by decree, yet her eyes shimmer with unspoken warmth. She replies, "And I swear I am yours, no matter how many silver coins a smile collector may demand for the joy that fills my heart. This seriousness you see upon my face is but a shield for happiness too great to measure, and you feel it, a gentle empathy, a tenderness stirred by their quiet defiance, even forced into blank expressions. Their love is alive, untouched. Eadwulf's law has not destroyed it. It has only driven love deeper, into secrecy, into resilience. History whispers behind this moment. Across time, personal vows, births, marriages, and even deaths have endured beneath the weight of censorship or oppression. When ritual was stripped of spectacle, what remained was raw sincerity. Some scholars argue that vows spoken under pressure become stronger, for when joy must be hidden, words carry even more truth. And so, here in St. Bees, you feel the duality. The cold stone of the quay beneath you, and the warmth of hands clasped tightly together. Your eyelids grow heavy. Let yourself rest in this contrast. The chill of law, the fire of love. Let my voice guide you through this moment, where even romance is an act of quiet resistance. You are safe. There is no need to guard your own expression. You may relax, release, and let these tender, hidden emotions carry you softly into sleep. You can feel it, the tension that has been rising inside Street Bees, like a tide that cannot be held back. For months, Mayor Eadwulf's rule, his absurd smile tax, his army of grim-faced collectors, had pressed down upon the town. And then, at last, the collapse came. But it was not rebellion, not battle, not fire in the streets. It was a pumpkin. It was autumn. The town was busy with the harvest. And there, on that fateful day, the mayor himself stood with his usual scowl, overseeing the delivery of an enormous pumpkin. So large, he had declared it property of the town. It was to be handled with solemn dignity. And yet, as the farmers strained to lift it, the cart slipped on a damp stone. The giant pumpkin rolled, and rolled, and then crashed straight into Eadwulf himself. He was not gravely hurt, but the sight, his hat flying off, his robes muddied, his body swallowed by the weight of a pumpkin, was more ridiculous than anyone could bear. And in that moment, after long months of silence, a sound escaped into the air. Not one single bright laugh, but a wave of collective laughter, rolling like the sea. And worst of all for Eadwulf, he laughed too, as he scrambled to his feet, dripping with mud. A small, helpless chuckle slipped from his mouth. A Jerusalem. The very giggle he had fined others double for. And then came Alaric, once a smile collector, no longer carrying his ruler. He looked at the mayor, expressionless, and said in a calm, steady voice, "Mayor, that was a Jerusalem. Laughter of this kind counts double. By your law, you owe 2 silver coins." That was the breaking point. The absurdity had looped back on itself. The people, laughing freely for the first time in months, no longer feared him. And those who once enforced the law no longer believed in it. The rule of Eadwulf ended not with violence, but with a pumpkin and a giggle. Some say the accident was only the spark, that the true collapse came when the enforcers themselves let go of the lie. For when those who uphold the law cease to believe in it, power dissolves like mist. And now, you feel it. Relief, flowing through street bees, like fresh air pouring into a long-closed room. Laughter, once taxed, once forbidden, is free again. Let that laughter wash over you. Not sharp, not loud, but soft, airy, like the gentle chuckle of children at play. A sound without anger. A sound of release. Everything is settled now. Everything is safe. Let this gentle joy carry you downward. Deeper. Into sleep. You are bathing now, in the soft afterglow of joy returning to St. Bees. For the first time in months, laughter is no longer forbidden. It has been declared legal again. Not by decree, but by the absurd collapse of the law itself. Mayor Eadwulf, shamed and muddied, was forced to step down, and when the fine was read against him, 2 silver coins for his own giggle, he paid it by selling his old woolen coat. So ended the reign of the smile tax. And now, we look at what remained. The scholars tell us the law lasted only briefly. Perhaps 8 months, perhaps 15. But even in that short span, it became a tale preserved in the monastery's records. The monks, so used to solemn silence, wrote of it with quiet amusement. A small parable of the vanity of earthly power. The town itself began to return to normal. And yet, something had shifted. Laughter was no longer careless. It was treasured. Every smile carried a new weight. A conscious reminder of freedom regained. There was even something curious. Those who had once purchased anti-laughter tonics on the black market now sought after a new remedy. Laughter encouragement elixirs. Simple herbs, fragrant and harmless, to loosen stiff muscles in cheeks and jaws that had forgotten how to laugh naturally. Months of suppression had left its mark, and people found they had to relearn joy. And there in the market, you noticed 2 familiar figures. Thomas, the fisherman. Anya, the candlemaker. Once, they had sworn vows of love, with solemn, empty faces by the sea. Now, Thomas whispers something, and Anya lets out a gentle giggle. A perfect Jerusalem, but this time free of penalty. It is a laugh touched with sweetness, and just a trace of caution. A quiet memory of how easily freedom can be taken away. Some scholars argue that Eadwulf's law, in its foolishness, only strengthened joy. By making laughter forbidden, he raised its value. And when the law finally fell, every chuckle, every grin, tasted richer for having been hard won. Let these reflections soothe your mind. You are in a town relearning how to smile, where laughter drifts through the air, like a lullaby, gentle, awkward, but utterly free. This is the lesson of St. Bees, that bad laws crumble, but the human spirit endures. That joy once caged returns brighter than before. You are safe here, surrounded by soft voices and shy laughter. Let yourself rest now. Let go, and drift into sleep. You are sinking into the rebirth of joy in St. Bees, where everything feels freshly washed, newly alive. The sunlight today seems brighter, and the sound of quiet giggles is slowly replacing the heavy sighs of yesterday. Mayor Eadwulf has been cast aside. The smile tax has been lifted. And yet, the air is not exactly as it once was. As you drift through the market square, you notice that caution lingers. But it is no longer fear. It is something gentler, almost playful. If someone laughs too loudly, their hand rises at once to cover their mouth. An old habit, born of long months under watchful eyes. Then they glance around, realizing there are no smile measurers anymore. And they chuckle again, this time at the silliness of their own reflex. And here is a curious detail, a gentle surprise. The change in the life of one former enforcer. Alaric, once a censor Vultus, the very man who dared to fine Mayor Eadwulf himself, now works with the bakers. He uses his wooden measuring stick still, but for a very different purpose. He measures the rise of freshly baked bread. He has shifted from measuring sorrow to measuring fullness, flavor, and warmth. Alaric, who once stood as a symbol of control, has become a symbol of precision, of craft. His smile is still a little awkward, but you can see, he is learning again. This, too, is part of history. After the fall of tyrannies, the tools of oppression are often repurposed, their meanings turned inside out. Alaric's measuring stick, once an emblem of restriction, is now a tool for quality. A small symbol of moving from control of the heart to care for the craft of the hand. You feel a deep comfort in this change. Even those once cast as villains may find gentler roles to play. Some scholars say that the smile tax left behind an odd inheritance. The people of St. Bees became masters of micro-expression, of tiny shifts in eyes, lips, and brows. After so many months, watching for every flicker of joy, they carried this sensitivity with them. A strange gift wrestled out of hardship. It made them, in the end, a more attentive, more empathetic community. And now, you can let yourself release. Let the shy, tender laughter of St. Bees rock you softly, like a lullaby. They are finding their joy again. And it is gentle, quiet, true. The air is filled with the salt of the sea and the scent of warm bread. No tension, no fear. Only the calm of return. You are drifting now, carried toward the end of this journey. You are standing at the gentle end of this quiet history. St. Bees has finally shaken off the shadow of the smile tax. You walk slowly through the town, breathing in a sense of safety, a calmness that feels final. Mayor Eadwulf is gone, and the people have learned their most important lesson, that absurdity can never rule forever. Yet one question remains, floating like a whisper in the evening air. Have we truly learned that lesson? Here is the official history. The tale of the smile tax in St. Bees, though only a small footnote in greater chronicles, is a perfect example of over-legislation. It shows that when laws are designed to control what is inherently human, like emotion, they will always collapse under the weight of their own nonsense. You see a carpenter at his bench, smiling freely as his chisel creates a perfect curling shaving of wood. It is a smile born of simple pride in his craft, once punishable, but now nothing more than a natural sound in the quiet of the afternoon. And here is the last curious detail. The monks of St. Bees Abbey, who had once kept their silence and their stern neutrality, chose to record the entire story of Eadwulf and the smile tax inside their book of offerings, right beside solemn prayers and serious events. Why? Not as mockery, but as a reminder. A reminder of both the humor and the danger of worldly power. Some scholars suggest the reason this story survived through the centuries was not because it was great history, but because it was a perfect bedtime tale. After all, who would not drift to sleep, imagining a town where people tried very hard not to laugh, the dullness of avoiding joy, becoming, in itself, The perfect lullaby. Now you are leaving Street B's. You glance back one last time. The houses are fading into shadow, with only faint candlelight flickering in the windows. There are no longer censored faces. No tension in the air. Only quiet peace. And a gentle acceptance. The story is over. But the lesson remains. Let the sound of the sea carry you. The same steady waves you first heard in part 1. Rocking you softly now. All has been resolved. Absurdity was undone. By a single pumpkin. And a laugh that could not be restrained. And now, you are completely safe. You have come a long way. From the tension of a silenced town, to the gentle release of its freedom. The story is complete now. And it is time to let every thought drift away. Like autumn leaves floating across still water. Take a slow, deep breath in, and slowly breathe it out. You may notice all the last details of the tale. The frown of Mayor Eadwulf. The soft clack of the smile measuring stick. The relief of that collective laughter. All fading gently into the shadows of your mind. Everything has been folded up. Placed neatly in a distant corner of memory, where it can rest, like a peaceful dream. Your mind is now like the village of St. Bees at night. Every candle has been extinguished. Every echo has fallen quiet. Only the calm of the midnight air remains. And the soft hush of the sea breeze. It feels so safe. Feel the cushion beneath your head. Feel the gentle heaviness of your eyelids. Closing naturally. Completely. You don't need to hold any expression. You don't need to try. Every muscle in your face, every part of your body, is loosening, resting, letting go. You are drifting, protected by the simple truth that joy cannot be taxed, and laughter will always find its way. Carry that safety, carry that softness with you into your sleep. May your dreams be tender and light, free of mayors who would ever silence your joy. Good night.